The rain pounded Seattle streets, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the chaos in Alex's heart. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the crumpled letter in his hand, the words blurring through tears he refused to let fall. At 19, he thought he'd mastered hiding who he was, but tonight, everything was unraveling. It started with a touch. A brush of fingers against Jamie's wrist in the dim glow of Alex's bedroom, where they'd spent hours whispering dreams and dodging truths. Jamie, his stepbrother, wasn't supposed to be the one who made his pulse race. But love doesn't care about rules. Their parents' marriage 3 years ago had thrown them together, two boys navigating a blended family, a small house, and a secret that could ruin them both. Alex's mother, Claire, was a woman of sharp edges and sharper expectations. She ran their home like a courtroom, her love conditional on perfection. His stepfather, David, was softer, a quiet man who'd brought Jamie into their lives and tried to bridge the gap between them all. But Jamie was fire. At 20, he was all defiance and charm, with eyes that saw through Alex's carefully built walls. They'd been circling each other for months, stolen glances turning into stolen moments. Until tonight, when Jamie had leaned in, his breath warm against Alex's cheek, and whispered, "I can't keep pretending." The letter in Alex's hand was Jamie's confession, written in hurried ink after their first kiss 2 weeks ago. "I'm in love with you, Alex. I don't know how to stop." Alex had kept it hidden under his mattress, a dangerous treasure. But tonight he'd pulled it out, needing to feel its weight. They'd been reckless, sitting too close, voices too soft, when Claire's footsteps echoed up the stairs. The door swung open, and there she was, Claire, her face a mask of shock and fury. "What is this?" she demanded, her eyes darting between Alex's tear-streaked face and Jamie's protective stance. The letter fluttered to the floor, and Alex's heart stopped as she snatched it up. Her voice trembled as she read aloud, each word a blade. "I'm in love with you, Alex. Your brothers," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "This is wrong. Disgusting." Jamie stepped forward, his jaw tight. "We're not brothers, Claire. We're stepbrothers. And I love him." Alex wanted to scream, to defend what they had, but fear choked him. Claire's gaze burned, and he saw something flicker in her eyes, something beyond anger. Guilt. Secrets. He couldn't tell. She crumpled the letter and threw it at their feet. "You will end this. Now. Or I'll tell David everything." The threat hung heavy, but Jamie didn't flinch. "Tell him," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not ashamed of who I love." Alex's stomach twisted. He wanted to be that brave, but all he could see was the life they'd built fragile, imperfect, crumbling under Claire's wrath. She stormed out, slamming the door, and Alex sank onto the bed, his hands shaking. Jamie knelt before him, taking his face in his hands. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "Together." But Alex wasn't so sure. Something in his mother's eyes told him this wasn't just about them. There was something she wasn't saying, something bigger than their love. The next morning, the house was a battlefield of silence. Claire barely looked at Alex over breakfast, her movements sharp as she poured coffee. David, oblivious, chatted about his day at the community center where he worked. Jamie caught Alex's eye across the table, a silent promise, but Alex couldn't shake the dread pooling in his chest. He needed answers not just about what Claire would do, but why she'd looked so haunted last night. After David left for work, Alex found Claire in the living room, staring out the rain-streaked window. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why does this matter so much to you?" She turned, her face pale, and for a moment, he thought she might cry. "You don't understand," she said. "You can't do this to our family." But her words felt hollow, like they were hiding something. That afternoon, Alex slipped into his mother's study, a room she kept locked most days. If she was hiding something, he'd find it. The desk was cluttered with bills and papers, but under a stack of old photos, he found a journal. Its pages were worn, filled with Claire's tight, careful handwriting. He hesitated, guilt gnawing at him, but he opened it. The entries were dated years back, before she'd met David, before Jamie. One caught his eye. "I can't tell him. If he knew about Michael, it would destroy us." Michael. The name hit Alex like a punch. He'd heard it once, years ago, in a hushed argument between his parents, his real father, not David. His mother had never spoken of him, only saying he'd left when Alex was a baby. But the journal hinted at something else, something Claire had buried deep. Alex's hands trembled as he read on, each word pulling him toward a truth he wasn't sure he wanted. By the time Jamie found him, Alex was shaking, the journal open on his lap. "What is it?" Jamie asked, his voice soft but urgent. Alex looked up, his throat tight. "I think my mom's been lying to me my whole life." Jamie sat beside him, their shoulders brushing, and for a moment, the world felt steady again. But the journal's secrets loomed, and Alex knew they were only beginning to unravel the mess their love had exposed. The rain hadn't stopped, a gray curtain over Seattle that matched the fog in Alex's mind. He clutched the journal, its pages heavy with his mother's past, while Jamie sat beside him, his presence the only anchor in the storm. They hadn't spoken about the fight with Claire, but the weight of her threat to tell David, to tear their family apart, hung over them like a guillotine. Alex flipped through the journal, his heart racing as he pieced together fragments of a story Claire had never shared. Michael, his father, wasn't just a man who'd walked out. The entries painted a different picture, a love that burned bright and broke spectacularly. "Michael was my everything," Claire had written, but he couldn't accept himself, let alone us. The words stung, hinting at a truth Alex couldn't fully grasp. Was Michael like him? Like Jamie? The thought made his chest ache with a mix of hope and dread. Jamie's hand found his, grounding him. "What do we do with this?" Jamie asked, his voice low. Alex shook his head. "I need to know more. She's hiding something, and it's not just about us." They agreed to keep the journal secret for now, but the tension in the house was unbearable. Claire's cold stares followed them, and David's cheerful obliviousness only made it worse. Alex felt like he was living in a house of glass, one wrong move away from shattering. That night, unable to sleep, Alex crept downstairs. The living room was dark, save for the flicker of a lamp where Claire sat, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked older, worn, as if the weight of her secrets was pulling her apart. "Mom," Alex said, stepping into the light. She flinched but didn't look at him. "Why didn't you tell me about Michael?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. "You went through my things." "I had to." Alex said, his voice breaking. You're tearing us apart over me and Jamie. But you're hiding something worse. Claire's face crumpled. And for the first time, Alex saw her not as his mother, but as a woman carrying a wound she'd never healed. You don't know what you're asking, she whispered. Michael, he wasn't who you think. She stood, pacing, her hands trembling. He loved someone else, she said finally. Another man. He tried to love me, to be the husband I wanted, but he couldn't. When I got pregnant with you, he stayed for a while, but it broke him. He left because he couldn't live a lie. Alex's breath caught. His father was gay. The realization hit like a wave, connecting dots he hadn't seen before. Claire's hatred of his relationship with Jamie wasn't just about propriety, it was personal. Why didn't you tell me? Alex asked, tears burning his eyes. Claire's voice was barely audible. Because I was ashamed. I thought if I could raise you right, make our family perfect, I could erase him. Erase that pain. She looked at him, her eyes pleading. I didn't want you to be like him. The words cut deep, but they also sparked something in Alex's anger. Defiance. And a fierce need to protect what he had with Jamie. I'm not ashamed of who I am, he said, his voice steady for the first time. And I'm not ashamed of loving Jamie. Claire turned away, her shoulders shaking, and Alex knew this wasn't the end of their fight. The next day, Jamie and Alex met at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. The bustle of the city a stark contrast to their quiet turmoil. Jamie listened as Alex recounted Claire's confession, his expression a mix of shock and resolve. She's scared, Jamie said, stirring his coffee. Not just of us, but of losing control, of facing her past. Alex nodded, but his mind was racing. If Claire's secret was tied to Michael, what else was she hiding? And how far would she go to keep it buried? They decided to confront David. If Claire wouldn't tell the whole truth, maybe he would. That evening, they found him in the garage, tinkering with an old radio. Dad, Jamie said, his voice firm but kind. We need to talk about Alex's mom. David's hands stilled, and he looked up, his face unreadable. What about her? He asked, but there was a tremor in his voice, like he already knew. Alex took a deep breath. She caught us, together. And she's freaking out. But I found something to journal. It mentions my dad, Michael. And I think there's more she's not telling us. David's eyes darkened, and he set the radio down. You don't want to dig into this, boys, he said quietly. Some things are better left alone. But Jamie, ever the firebrand, leaned forward. No, Dad. We deserve to know. And so do you. David sighed, rubbing his face. Claire's been through a lot. More than you know. Michael wasn't just her husband, was my friend. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Alex's heart pounded. Your friend, he echoed. David nodded, his gaze distant. We were close. Back in college. Before Claire. Before everything. He loved her. But he loved someone else too. And when it all fell apart, I was there to pick up the pieces. Alex's mind reeled. David knew Michael. Knew his secret. And Claire had married him anyway, carrying that betrayal into their new life. The pieces were falling into place. But the picture was uglier than Alex had imagined. He looked at Jamie, whose eyes burned with the same determination he felt. They weren't just fighting for their love anymore, they were fighting for the truth. The truth was a jagged edge, cutting deeper with every revelation. Alex and Jamie sat in their bedroom. The journal opened between them, its pages a map of Claire's pain and secrets. David's confession had cracked open a door Alex wasn't sure he wanted to walk through. But there was no turning back now. The rain had stopped, leaving a damp chill that seeped into the house, mirroring the cold reality they faced. David's words echoed in Alex's mind. Michael, his father, had been in love with another man. David had known, had been part of that tangled history, and Claire had carried the weight of it for years. But there was more. Alex could feel it. The journal's final entries were cryptic, hinting at a choice Claire had made, one that cost her more than she'd ever admitted. They confronted her together, Alex and Jamie, in the living room where the air felt thick with unspoken truths. Claire stood by the window, her back to them, as if she could hide from what was coming. "Mom," Alex said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "You need to tell us everything. About Michael. About why you're so afraid of me and Jamie." She turned, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. "You think you understand pain," she said, her voice raw. "You don't. I loved Michael with everything I had, and he broke me. When he left, I swore I'd protect you from that kind of hurt." She paused, her gaze flickering to Jamie. "But I failed. I see it, no, you're just like him." Alex's heart clenched, but Jamie stepped forward, his hand finding Alex's. "We're not him," Jamie said. "We're not hiding who we are. And we're not letting you punish us for his mistakes." Claire's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, Alex saw her not as a judge, but as a woman who'd lost everything to love. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "There's something I never told you," she whispered. "Michael didn't just leave. He took his life." The words hit like a tidal wave, stealing Alex's breath. Jamie's grip tightened, grounding him as Claire continued. "He couldn't live with the shame, the guilt of loving who he did. I found him. Alex. I found him, and I couldn't save him." The room spun. Alex's father, the man he'd never known, had been crushed by the same fear Claire now aimed at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alex choked out. Claire's voice broke. "Because I thought if I kept you safe, kept you normal, I could make up for it. I could keep you from ending up like him." Jamie's voice cut through, fierce and unwavering. "You don't get to decide who we love, Claire. And you don't get to make us carry your grief." Alex looked at him, his heart swelling with a love so fierce it drowned out the pain. Jamie was right, they weren't Michael. They weren't doomed to repeat his tragedy. The days that followed were a fragile dance. Claire retreated into herself, grappling with the past she'd buried. David, torn between loyalty to her and love for Jamie, tried to mediate, but the wounds were too raw. Alex and Jamie clung to each other, their love a quiet rebellion against the chaos. They talked late into the night, planning a future where they could be free not just from Claire's judgment, but from the ghosts of a past that wasn't theirs. One evening, as spring broke through Seattle's endless gray, Alex found Claire in the backyard, planting flowers in the damp earth. She looked up, her hands dirty, her face softer than he'd ever seen. "I'm trying," she said, her voice small, I don't know if I can ever understand. But I'm trying. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Alex nodded, a weight lifting from his chest. That's all I need for now. He and Jamie moved out that summer, finding a small apartment near the university where they both enrolled. It wasn't easy. Claire's pain lingered, and David's quiet support couldn't erase the years of silence. But Alex and Jamie built something new. Something theirs. They held hands in public, unafraid, and kissed under the city's neon lights. Each moment of victory over fear. Years later, at a pride parade in Seattle, Alex stood with Jamie, their fingers laced, watching rainbow flags ripple in the wind. Claire was there too, hesitant but present, a small rainbow pin on her jacket. She didn't speak, but her presence said enough. The past hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined them. Alex squeezed Jamie's hand, his heart full. They'd fought for this, for love, for truth, for a family that could bend without breaking. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And in the end, that was enough.